Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, coming at you with yet another 80s slasher film. And this time going to 1982's Death Valley, which I had never heard of before clicking on it on YouTube. Well, it's directed by Dick Richards, who has worked with a lot of people. Very little films, but I mean, the last film he did was in '86. But he's worked with a lot of big known actors. And I can believe it, because even though this one doesn't have any A-listers, it does have some very recognizable people. For example, the lead in this film, the young child actor on this Stranger Things looking cover, is Peter Billingsley, Ralphie from A Christmas Story. I can't remember if Christmas Story was 83 or 84, but this was 82, so it was before, so he's a tad younger. Paul Le Mat is in it. I know he was in the first Puppet Master. I'm only saying it because if I don't, someone else will say it as if I don't know. Catherine Hicks, Andy's mother from Child's Play. Of course, Wilford Brimley. Wilford Brimley. And yes, just because someone will say in the comments, Wilford Brimley was in Carpenter's The Thing. You know, he's also the diabetes guy. Edward Herrmann, who was in The Lost Boys, he's only in the first scene. Stephen McHattie, which I've heard of this one movie he did. Let's see if I can find it before I click on it. Ponypool or Pontypool, I've heard of it. It's a Canadian horror film. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard of it. I heard he did fantastic in it. But, so, this is yet another slasher that I've come across that I'm sure people will say, it's not a slasher because I didn't like it. It doesn't matter. Because it's not a body count film like, say, Friday the 13th or The Burning. It is very story driven. It more character driven. I mean, the body count, there is, what is there? We get like 5 kills spread out throughout the film. It is more about the story, which Peter Billingsley, it opens up with him and his dad, Edward Herrmann. His parents are divorced. He's telling him, you got to go back to your mom. It sucks, but you have to. He gets back with her. She has a new boyfriend named Mike, played by Paul Le Mat. She's played by Catherine Hicks. She did a great job in this as well. And they're taking a trip through, like, Arizona, gonna go up to the Grand Canyon, and they go through Death Valley. And Peter Billingsley as the kid, which I already forgot the kid's name, but Billy. He obviously has his wall up with the mom's boyfriend, Mike, but he's not a brat towards him, which I appreciated, because the movie does put them through what's called an arc. Why do I have to explain it like that? It's because newer horror films don't do that. They don't give a fuck about characters or arcs. Where, okay, at first he doesn't really give a shit about this guy. He's not his dad. He's not going to think of him that way. But he makes an effort for the sake of his mother. And as the film goes on, then of course with the end, we had this moment that brings them together. That's called an arc. If only newer films would focus on that. And while they're going through there, they stop off. I say this deserty area. It's all deserty. Billy's walking around. He comes across this RV where earlier in the film, these three people had their throats slit by a guy with a machete. He's walking around the RV. He finds this little frog pendant, and he takes it. And then they're going around. They stop off at a restaurant. They're driving back through. They're gonna go to this like Wild West reenactment place, and they see the RV, which has been burnt, being pulled up. Police are there. The sheriff, played by Wilford Brimley. Billy gets it in his head that he has to return the pendant, so he does. Wilford Brimley recognizes the pendant as belonging to this guy or someone he knows. I guess these known criminals. And the guy he goes to see is played by Stephen McHattie, who's wearing his frog pendant. And, of course, so we have the three people that got killed in the RV. Wilford Brimley, this came out the same year as The Thing. He gets a pickaxe to the chest. I mean, 7 minutes in, I already spoiled that. But he goes to talk to the guy. He's like, you know, dude, he's not wearing it, but I don't want to take this off. He's like, I see you're wearing yours, so where is Stu? Like, where is he? And then he goes to leave, and he gets a pickaxe to the chest. And now the killer is after Billy and his family. And just because Stephen McHattie looks like the killer in Nightmares in a Damaged Brain, and he is kind of stalking this family, this movie reminded me of that, even though it is very different. Peter Billingsley is he plays a much better character than the CJ kid of that fucking movie, even though I like Nightmares in a Damaged Brain. And you can tell there are some sort of scenes that make it feel like they don't really have enough story. Because, I mean, there's this one part, because they're staying at a hotel. Catherine Hicks and Mike, they want to go out together, so they hire this babysitter. And they have this really awkward scene because the babysitter is a heavier set girl. He's watching, you know, this old cowboy movie because he loves cowboys. I think that's one reason why they're going through Death Valley. It's the boyfriend's sort of effort to do something for him. So he's watching this cowboy movie, and he keeps showing her looking at the table with chocolates and chips. He offers her some chocolate, she eats it, then she asks about the chips, she eats them, and we get these long scenes where she folds and crinkles the wrappers as she kind of glances over at the rest of the snacks. And then she's just like, how about some ice cream? Because she's given money for ice cream. She goes and gets some ice cream, and then she's killed. Throat slit. Even Wilford Brimley and some of the other cops talk about how the throat slashing is the MO of those that were killed some time ago. And, I mean, if you're going into this movie wanting to see a big body count slasher film, you're going to be disappointed. I mean, it doesn't take away from the fact that it is a slasher film. I know a lot of the genre equals opinion people will say, well, I didn't see it as a slasher because I've only seen the franchise films, Tom Savini films, and, you know, like My Bloody Valentine and shit like that. So this is not a slasher because it's different. Has less bodies, less blood. Doesn't really matter. It's still a fucking slasher. The story isn't as strong as, say, something like Funeral Home, but I do commend the cast. The cast, not only did they do their parts well, but the characters were well written, which is something that you don't see a lot, especially nowadays. You don't see, especially with a child character. And I mean, I thought Peter Billingsley alone could have carried this movie. But the characters are well written. There's an arc. There is a twist that is kind of take it or leave it. You can kind of see it coming. I mean, there's a part where Peter Billingsley, after the babysitter's killed, the killer who we see is Stephen McHattie, gets into his hotel room. He locks himself in the bathroom. And he talks about how he's not going to bust the door down because he'll make a mess. He's just going to remove the molding. And then, Mike overhears a guy at the bar talking about, yeah, the sheriff was given this little pendant from this tourist kid. He went to go check it out. No one answers the hotel room phone when he calls through payphone, so they go. And it's basically the last 15, 20 minutes or so do we actually see some stuff happen. That's the actual, I guess, horror elements, other than the few killings put throughout. And I mean, the mom's boyfriend isn't like a weakling. I mean, he fights back. We find out that, twist, spoilers. Can I recommend it? It's free on YouTube, so if you have to see every slasher film, then sure. But if you're looking for a Maniac, or The Burning, or My Bloody Valentine, or a Pieces, you're going to be disappointed. It's not that kind of slasher film. I would say it's the sort of, as far as story-driven ones, you have like Final Exam here, and I could say Don't Go in the House. Yeah, Don't Go in the House is here, along with like Funeral Home. I would say Death Valley's kind of right in the middle, but it's the performances that help it. But spoilers. Mike is able to shoot Stephen McHattie, but then we find out there's another one, a twin, which he plays also. And so then we get a whole other round of chase and cat and mouse. Peter Billingsley does get to fire a gun at the killer. I think it whisks right by his head. Then at the end, he's being chased through the desert by the killer's car, which is blowing the horn at him. Then Stephen McHattie just kind of walks in a frame, car steers and hits him. Find out it was Mike and his mother, Catherine Hicks, that were in the car trying to get his attention because he ran off. And then the final shot is them getting out of the car, him running up to them, and he hugs Mike. That's his arc. He goes from not giving a shit to making an effort to now they're hugging. Sucks to say this is how they bond, but they have their moment together. So it's not like Mike was a weakling or someone who got killed and then that character relationship was severed without anything happening. They actually followed through with the arc. I thought that was something kind of new for this kind of film. You don't really see a whole lot of arcs other than weaker characters getting stronger, like the final girl or something. And yeah, this movie doesn't rely on its body count, doesn't rely on its effects, because there really aren't effects. There's not really a whole lot of blood. It's just the blood you see initially. That's pretty much it. If this was just your run-of-the-mill, nobody cast, it probably would have been really boring and not that worth it. But I thought, Peter Billingsley, even as young of a kid as he is, I thought he did a fine job. Catherine Hicks, of course, Paul Le Mat, the short scenes with Wilford Brimley. Stephen McHattie just looks like a psycho. They made it work. And they helped pull the narrative along that this movie was trying to rely on. So it wasn't as strong as, say, something like Funeral Home, but it wasn't like a boring chore like, say, Final Exam or Night School. But other than that, there's really not a whole lot to say about it. I mean, these films really are easy to talk about. I'm actually trying to stretch these videos out a bit, even though I was trying to shorten it before. But anyway, that's 1982's Death Valley. I hope this review was enough. I know my slasher ones are kind of not much to them, but there really isn't much to say about a lot of them, especially these obscure ones. Even though this did get a Blu-ray recently, so will I pick it up? It is something I would like to have. I do collect slasher films for better or worse, but yeah, that's 1982's Death Valley. Thank you for watching.